Hello everyone, my name is Sergey Sputnikov, and this is Ushanka Show, where everyone can learn something new about life in the Soviet Union. Здравствуйте, дорогие товарищи! В эфире программа Ushanka Show. So recently I made a video about partyanki. So those are food wraps that were used extensively by Soviet army soldiers as well as villagers. That video was requested by one of my subscribers, Louis Miller, who asked about the way people wrap fabric around their feet. And also there was another question in that comment. Maybe you could talk about underwear as well, bras in particular. What were those hot Soviet babes wearing under their sweaters? Unfortunately, I discovered the joys of cross-dressing only after I moved to America, so I cannot tell you much about comfort of the Soviet-era bras, but I will do my best. And as always, we'll start with a short lesson of Russian language. Урок русского языка. Трусы. Трусы. So that's the Russian word for underwear. Трусы. What's interesting, the word трусы in Russian comes only in the plural form, just like American pants. There's no pant, right? It's only pants. Similarly, we say only трусы, not трус, because трус has a totally different meaning. The word трус in Russian means covered or just chicken shit, so someone who is always scared to do something. So it's interesting, right? Трус is covered, but трусы is underwear. And before we start the main story, a quick reminder that you always can support this channel with your likes, with your comments, you can bribe me with your super thanks, and there's always Patreon. Thank you so much for your support. And now I'm gonna tell you a pretty wild story. Some of you may not believe it, some of you may start commenting again, here you go, Comrade Sputnikov spreading anti-Soviet propaganda again. But this story, it's my personal experience, plus my mom confirmed similar occasions, so here we go. Some of you may remember this photo. It was taken sometime in 1970s in the northern Ukraine, in the village of Kamka, which is not far away from my grandparents' village. It's hard to believe that this photo was taken in the same country that 25 years prior managed to launch the first satellite into space, and a little bit later, first human into space. And meanwhile, these women walk around barefoot. You know, out of 5 women, 3 don't have any shoes, and they look pretty poor, let's put it that way. But there's another thing about them that you don't see, but it relates to their underwear. And it's not my statement. My mother actually confirmed it when we talked a couple days ago, and I was asking her questions about underwear situation in the Soviet Union. And she said blatantly, out in the country, women usually don't wear underwear in the summer. They only wear, she called sharavary, she was like a warm trousers during the winter time. But during summer, she said, no underwear needed. It's actually more convenient not to have an underwear when you wear a skirt and you work in the garden. If you need to go, you just kind of spread your legs, do your business number one, and you continue pulling weeds or do whatever else you do in the garden. And believe it or not, I have a personal kind of crazy story to confirm my mom's statement. And it's once again, it's about life out in the village in the northern Ukraine. So some of you may remember this is my grandmother Maria. She was born in 1907. And she babysat me every summer through the 70s and 80s. And this story happened, I would say, late 70s, when I was about 6 or 7. So I was born in 1971. And this is the location of this incident. So this is my little brother, Tom. And this photo was taken way later, of course, because my brother was born in 1986. So this is probably 1990 or 1989. If you look to the right, there's an access hatch to go into the attic of our house, our log cabin. So ladder is not placed at the right spot. That's why kid is looking back at me, because I told him like, hey, you better get down before you fall. So we had a problem with a leaky roof. So one day, grandma and I were getting ready to go up on the roof and try to find where the water gets, through the tiles, and place some plastic, like a tarp, to stop water from leaking, like a temporary solution, right? So grandma went up first, and I was at the bottom of the ladder, and I just happened to look up, and I saw this moon, let's put it that way. It happened totally by accident, and why I still remember that, because it shocked me a lot, not because I saw my grandma's butt, not because I realized she doesn't wear any underwear, but because her butt looked like old wrinkled apple. There was just so many wrinkles on it, like almost like moon surface. And that was like really what just was total shock. And then was the moment when grandma realizes that maybe I'm looking up. So she looked down, I looked away. That was just a kind of awkward moment. We never talked about it, but it stuck in my mind forever. And it confirms story of my mom that ladies out in the villages never wore underwear in the summer. And I'm not sure if it's only the older generation that prefer to go commando during the summer, but it kind of gives me different angle looking at this socialist realism art from 1970s. This is when the guy from the village returns from his military service, and of course it has this kind of like interesting energy going on. These young ladies, milkmaids, staring at the guy who came back, and he's so cool, all military outfit and stuff. And I'm like, I wonder how many of them are missing underwear as well. And there's another kind of hilarious story my mom shared with me. Apparently, in the early 1970s, when they were got married and they lived in that family dormitory, there was a shortage of a men's underwear, and my dad for a while ended up wearing my mom's underwear. And she said she didn't modify it in any way, so just he ended up wearing my mom's underwear. I don't know for how long till she managed to snatch some, new pairs of men's underwear at the store. And speaking of men's underwear, the most popular common type of men's underwear was so-called семейные трусы, so that's family underwear, but it's similar to what Americans call boxers. Семейные трусы or семейки. And although normal bathing suit will be so-called speedos, quite often people out on the countryside who had no access to the swimming trunks, they would just go swimming in their family underwear and their семейные трусы. And to be honest, I did the same thing myself. I quite often wore семейные трусы and boxers when I went swimming out in the country in the village. I just found them more comfortable. They dry up faster and had more airflow than Speedos. And here's another photo where I'm wearing my boxers while swimming. This is actually one of the most fun things we ever done on the river. We would sink our wooden boat on purpose, so playing like Titanic game. So we'll start sinking it and then we race the opposite side of the boat trying to recover. So that's the moment they caught us. But unfortunately, because my boxer is such a light color, it looks like I'm butt naked, but I'm not. And here's a close shot of one of those wooden flat bottom boats that people used in northern Ukraine. And besides fishing, they actually use them to transfer hay across the river. So it's pretty stable, but it's really easy to sink if you really want to do it. But since it's made out of wood, it will pop back up to the surface. And I asked Bogdan to make this picture in color. Thanks to modern technologies, it's possible. So as you can see, I do have my boxers on. And as I said, it was so much fun because we can stay in one end of the boat and watch it filled with water. And at some point, we'll start kind of going nose in the water. We'll start racing to the opposite end, trying to recover it. That was so fun. And besides boxers, семейные трусы, we had also briefs, but I don't think we had any special name for those. They were just трусы, and this is a classic example of Soviet-era underwear briefs. When it comes to female underwear, I kind of feel bad for the Soviet ladies because the only nice-looking underwear they'll be imported from East Germany or Czechoslovakia, and those were hard to get. Otherwise, Soviet female underwear was quite ugly. And here's a screenshot from the popular Soviet-era movie Москва слезам не верит. Moscow doesn't trust tears. So this is a typical type of Soviet-era underwear for women, so-called pantaloni. Or another name was repetuzi. So as you see, it looks more like a winter-type underwear. So it's a thick fabric. It's pretty warm. But there's not much sexiness in that thing. And here's a drawing from the Soviet standard for female underwear. On the left is a pantalоны трикотажные женские, so it's a female pantalones, different styles. So the bottom looks like briefs. And on the right is the комбинации трикотажные женские, so it's like a combos. So it's a one-piece underwear, so it's almost like a nightgown. The lady on the left on this photo is Ekaterina Furtseva. She was a member of the Presidium of the Central Committee or Committee of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union. So this is really up there, right, in Soviet bureaucracy. And back in 1957, she announced that every Soviet woman has a right for a quality bra. So it kind of tells you about the situation with their underwear in the Soviet Union, that even a member of Presidium of Central Committee announces that we have a problem, we have a shortage of the quality underwear for women. I believe this photo was taken sometime in the early 1980s, and you kind of see prices. So the cheapest bra was like 3 rubles and some kopecks on the far left, but the ones on the right, I guess the premium ones, about 5 rubles, 475, 440. And I just looked it up. Right now, you can buy a basic bra in the United States for about $12. So that means that 150 rubles, average salary in 1980s, Soviet lady could buy 32 bras per month, which equals, if you pay $12 per unit here per bra, to about $385 salary. So bras were quite expensive in the Soviet Union. And here's an example of the Soviet era briefs. Can't even tell you if it's a children's or adults, is a male or females. Pretty basic, pretty ugly. And speaking of prices, of course, prices were set up by the government. There was no market going on. There was no brands. And average price was, looks like about 1 ruble a pair. The lowest, cheapest underwear was about 50 kopecks a pair. The most expensive, made out of silk, 3 rubles. So average about 1 ruble. So if your salary is 150 rubles a month and you're paying 1 ruble, picture if you're making $3,000 a month here in the United States, you'll have to pay $20 a pair of underwear. So this is like high-end prices if we're comparing salaries in the United States versus Soviet salaries. And it wasn't cheap, but it wasn't that crazy expensive. I don't remember really much about shortage, but periodically there was shortage of underwear, especially out in the small towns. Of course, Kiev, Moscow, Leningrad were supplied way better, so we didn't have issues with finding truсы for sale. By the way, this poster states you need to eat good food regularly and not too much. And then it says толстеть значит стареть. Getting fat means getting old. Okay, my friends, all I can tell you about underwear situation in the Soviet Union. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please don't forget to like it. If you think I missed something, you can post your comments and questions below this video, and we'll talk to you soon. До побачення. Goodbye.